working on the first collection, we had come across the Latin phrase Memento Mori, and I had just grazed across it partially because a lot of the first collection was focused on death and a lot of bone elements, a lot of skulls. And so when you go into the art archives across wherever you're looking, you're gonna find a lot of stuff that's based on skulls. And a lot of them had Memento Mori written underneath, and I was like, well, I don't know what this phrase is. But because we were working from first collection, which was based on a Latin phrase, simul justus et peccator, which is you are simultaneously just and a sinner, I had looked up Memento Mori. It was also Latin, so it was kind of a duality there of just like the consistency of using Latin phrases. And so I had just grabbed a bunch of these art pieces and put them in a folder and never thought about them again, really. And then once we wrapped up first collection, I don't know, did we take like a week break? I don't even know if we didn't even take a break.
We moved right into the commentary.
Yeah, that's right. We moved into the commentary, and we were looking through the commentary for first collection was all written out. It was all based on the designs and talking through all the designs and where the concepts came from. And for the design aesthetic, we wanted to use sculptures. We wanted to use like all of these old ancient sculptures from the Renaissance, from the Baroque era. And you sent me this one piece that you found in someone's story, and it was like, it's what the...
Mask of Agamemnon, but I don't remember.
Sure. I mean, it's the prologue, it's the half face, half skull. And you sent that to me, and I was just like, I think this is the vibe for the commentary and the design aesthetic we're gonna use. We didn't use it, again, took all of that and put it in a folder, saved it for later. And then we were working on the commentary, and that just became a massive project in itself. And then I think I just came over here one day and I had started thinking about the Memento Mori saying, and was just like, I wonder if it'd be cool to like explore death just in itself. Because the first collection was death to life, being inspired from Ezekiel 37, can these bones live? So we had the question and the answer from the first collection. So it was just like, what if we took a microscope and just went straight in on death, and we used Memento Mori as the big concept phrase as our guidance.
I remember how it happened. You were over here really late, and we randomly were trying to pull up a few things because you had found angels you really wanted to use.
Yes, too. The cemetery ones.
Yeah, it was that. And you're like, I just keep coming back to this, and I just needed a break from wrapping up the commentary from first collection. And I had pulled up, we were just like sharing files back and forth a bunch. And then the next day when you came over to work after like staying up super late, just talking through lots of concepts between the things that we found, you're like, I think we hit on something like that.
Yeah, and I originally wanted to do this angel piece, which is the epilogue in the second collection. I wanted to do it as a special release and just like be a one-off piece. Yeah, it would be a one-off piece. We'd get to use the font that you made from first collection that, again, we just stored in a folder and said, we'll come back to this. So all this stuff, we were just digging back out and saying, this has a spot, this has a spot, this has a spot. And now all of a sudden we have somewhat of a design aesthetic for an entirely new collection. And I think when I came over, I think it was a Thursday. I don't know why. I remember it definitely wasn't Tuesday, but it was Thursday. And I was laying over there. I was laying on the toy room floor, and you were spouting off about the Southside Rabbi podcast about death and futility, et cetera, et cetera. And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, she's on the same thoughts. Because I hadn't shared it with you yet. I hadn't shared Memento Mori and the ideas that were behind it. I had just kept it to myself, because typically when I get an idea, I let it simmer, I let it just sit and see if it goes anywhere. And usually if I keep quiet and I start to see it pop up in conversation, then I'm like, okay, I think I should pursue that, because other people's minds are gravitating towards it. And when she mentioned it, I was just like, I got this concept, it's called Memento Mori. It's gonna be all about death or remembering death. And we're gonna do a mini version of it, and we're gonna release it on Black Friday. And I think I said it like exactly like that. It was just super fast. And it was just, right, right, exactly. And it was just like, and then I had gone home, I think it was that night, and I made like 6 straight designs, and I'm like, this is the collection, this is it. and let's refine all of these. I think I only ended up using like 2 of those designs. One of them was the Two-Face, one of them was the Angel, and then the skull with the hourglass.
Yeah, and it was funny because it completely derailed where we said we were going to go next. So that just got moved forward, and we've already moved it forward again because it doesn't fit in the flow of thought. But it's definitely a place where the more we talked about it and based off of where we were going in our own thoughts and seeing how they merged together, it was a continuation or a deeper exploration of just looking at what it means to live and die, just like we did in the first collection. But again, this time with the influence of looking like how is that going to affect the way you walk through your day-to-day living when it comes to you are going to die, you are finite, there's a limit to your time, and what are you doing to make it count or to have value to it, or it should be something that gives your life value because it's not limitless.
Right, and because you work backwards, or because we work backwards from the perspective of you're going to die someday, which is really the whole idea of the concept of the Latin concept was in, you know, the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, the being in contact with death was so much more evident and it was so much more real because people died in their homes. Nowadays, which is where the Matthew McCullough book comes from, which comes from the Southside Rabbi podcast that you were hitting hard on, and you were just like, this idea and all this stuff is so awesome. And looking into that, it was like, we don't deal with death, or we don't even get to experience death in the same way that they did hundreds of years ago, because we've built buildings and hospitals to like sanitize it and put it over here away from society, and it's just like when you die you go to this place and you die here, rather than I'm gonna die in the, you know, early 1600s, 1700s, you just died in your home, around your family, where people were witnessing it and watching you pass away. So it's just like our concept with this was like, let's stick our face straight into death and create all of these pieces that are like very contemplative, and just give people the space and the opportunity to look at it and do what you want with it.
Right. Bringing pieces through design to culture where it's really hard to know how to engage with death or dying, or even to really look at it, because as a whole our society would prefer to be numb, to not experience, or to not be placed in that awkwardness of not knowing what to say or how to say when people are working through hard things or literally dying in front of you, and even just our refusal to deal with pain as a whole in our society. And so that was a whole way of presenting a means of talking about death and pain. At least that was part of our goal. And it's not aggressive. None of the designs are meant to be in your face, like grabbing you around the neck and pulling you like, hey, pay attention to this. They aren't violent. They aren't overwhelmingly dark, other than the fact
demonic that, or anything like that.
It's not a death metal song.
Right.
It's much more like a thoughtful prose poem, where you're like just sitting back and taking it in. And ideally, if you sit and think about some of those things, it continues to generate further conversation into looking like what makes it so hard for us to face pain and death and an end, or take hold of things and really start doing stuff instead of just existing in life.
Right. And on that note of it not being demonic or dark, like, this isn't meant to be like we're wishing death upon people, or we're suicidal, or we're nihilistic, or anything related to those. It's not depressed. It's just, have you thought about this lately? Because most people haven't.